Hey, welcome back. My name's Paloma. I'm a digital illustrator. So in my last video, I briefly went over how I got my first game art job with Red Essence Games working on Traveler's Refrain, which we just launched last month. And if you want to check it out, I'll put a link to our Steam page in the description below. So today I wanted to expand a bit on the process of what it was like to join Red Essence Games and also go into detail about my experience working on the project. So as I mentioned before, I was in the middle of a one-on-one mentorship with Tyler Edlin, who's a very experienced environment artist in the industry who's worked on games. He has his own YouTube channel, and he mentioned getting an email from a couple guys who were asking if any of his students would be interested in working on their game projects. Tyler sent me a couple screenshots of what the art direction looked like for the game project, and when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is right up my alley. My immediate thoughts were like, okay, so I'm definitely not gonna get it because I don't have a game art portfolio. I am specifically doing this mentorship so I can develop the skills to then make a new game art portfolio. So it all felt pretty premature, but was I gonna say no? No. My portfolio at the time was full of portraits and mediocre imaginative illustrations, but I threw my hat in the ring anyway. But then about a day or two later, I get an email. The email is from Hagialas, and it says, "Hey Paloma, my studio is working on an unannounced 2D hand-painted action RPG, and we are looking for an environment artist to help create and paint in-game 2D assets. I was referred to you by Tyler Edlin, and I think you have some great stuff in your portfolio. If you're interested, I would love to have a Discord call to discuss the game and position further. Looking forward to chatting. Thanks, Nick." So I see this email, and I'm just like, so of course, I'm very eager to schedule this Discord call, and on that call, I got to formally meet Red Essence Games studio owners Nick Hagialas and Arman Irapetian. And when I went to Nick's website, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm already familiar with him because he's the one that made ArtQuest. Which, if you've never heard of ArtQuest, it's a series of lessons that Nick Hagialas designed where he pretty much gamified the act of learning art skills. So you get to create your own avatar and you get to test your skills with ArtQuest that he designed to build your portfolio. And you get to level up and track your progress. So I'll put a link to that in the description below because his website can explain that way better than I can. And this isn't sponsored, by the way. I just wanted to mention this really quick, just for those of you who might want to find some new engaging ways to learn some art skills. And the call went great. We were really just shooting the shit about what kind of games we love. We were talking about the project, and I was telling them how much I think I would enjoy it. The art style of the game is 2D hand painted, very whimsical and magical, just perfection for me personally. And to my surprise, we all happen to live in Houston, Texas. The stars really happen to align very poetically. So Nick messages me on Discord and asks if I could complete an art test. And basically the art test was to design and paint up a skeleton of a scene in a Photoshop file. The concept was a mechanical metal door pushed up against a cliff edge, and the most important parts were the design of the metal door and the design of the walkway. He also included a couple pillar assets just to see how I can adapt to pre-designed assets. He gave me the test on a Wednesday, and he wanted it done by Monday. So I really took advantage of the time that I was given and spent a ridiculous amount of hours on that test. And I'll show you what my final result looked like. I was working with a lot of different textures, and my techniques for painting those textures weren't really developed yet, so I was spending a lot of time trying to figure it out. So I used all the tools at my disposal. So I had Procreate, Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, and Adobe Illustrator was really useful for the more precise shapes like gears, metal shapes, pipes, stuff like that. And of course, I was really worried about doing a good job. So I was going really ham on all the small details, and it made me go a little overboard a bit. But overall, Nick said that he thought it was awesome, and after discussing with Arman, he said that they wanted to bring me on board to join the Red Essence Games team. And then he told me about my job responsibilities, which were assisting rendering pre-designed in-game assets, assisting with coloring and painting animation frames, doing sketches and quick concept work for environment areas, contributing to design and world building, and attending weekly meetings and delivering assets on agreed upon deadlines. And I would also be getting a seat in the Unity engine. And then he went into payment details, and the way that worked was I would receive a weekly batch of assets to complete. Each asset batch would be placed on a sheet, which could be small, medium, or large. And the larger the sheet was, the higher the value. And then there was a value for set piece assets, single assets, and also animation frames. So I would complete a certain amount of asset batches per week, and then I would get paid at the end of the month. This was a contract position. I'd be working part-time, and Nick and Armand were paying the team right out of their own pockets. The game was titled Traveler's Refrain, and this was going to be the studio's very first shipped game. And for me, it worked perfectly fine for part-time income. I wasn't really doing this for the money anyways. I really wanted this experience. So working on the game was very exciting, but also very challenging because I was also working full-time as a graphic designer. So I'd come home working my 9 to 5, and then I'd be dedicating anywhere from 3 to 6 hours working on the game project. And here's a little clip of what it looks like to work on the game in Unity Engine. Here are a few of my favorite assets that I've made. At first, I was having a bit of difficulty completing my asset batches in time because I was still settling into my painting techniques. But I was very fortunate because Nick was a wonderful mentor. He was also very patient with me, gave me a lot of good feedback and a lot of good tips, and over time, my workflow got a lot faster. I had a few bad habits that I really needed to break, the biggest one being a tendency to be a bit too laser focused on details, which would lead to my textures being a bit too busy and noisy. Nick was really good about hopping on a Discord call with me and painting over my work to give me some feedback, which really helped me improve. Later on, I even got to design some critters and also some characters and even animate some robots, which was really fun. The team overall was just really wonderful. We were all so enthusiastic and cared a lot about the success of the project. There was one time in particular during development when we were all working on the storybook sequence of our game, which was one of my favorite parts to work on. We all had to lock in to get this particular sequence done, and we got it done within a week. I was designing the characters, Alice was on the environments, Nick was assembling everything in the engine, Armand was programming, Milan, our composer, made some of my most favorite music that we have in the whole game. When it comes to the success of a project, it's really important for the whole team to be on the same page and to be enthusiastic and care about bringing it to a finish. During the end of development, I actually had to go back and redo some of my old assets because there is such a huge visible skill disparity because I had leveled up so much over time. Another cool thing that happened during development was that Red Essence Games started a podcast, and I got to take part in it and talk about some of my favorite gaming topics, which if you want to check that out, I'll also link that in the description. I also got to participate with my team during 2024's Stream Next Fest. Alice flew down from Los Angeles and we all got to stream our demo live, which was really fun. So if you're trying to get your first game project experience, it could be worth looking into to work with a small indie team. But of course, everyone's circumstances are different. Not everyone can take on a second job. Not everyone can only take part-time income. But if you can swing it, just make sure that your team meshes well, everyone's on the same page, everyone's excited. You just want to use your best judgment that your team forms the right recipe to get the project to the finish line. Ran out of sun, had to turn the lamp on. Okay, so my experience was a bit unorthodox because my art portfolio wasn't even optimized for a game art job, right? If it was AA or AAA studio jobs that I was applying for, my portfolio would not have had a shot. But when it comes to smaller teams, particularly in the indie space, the needs of art directors can probably be a bit different than those in AA or AAA studios. And you know, there was actually a time when I asked Nick, and I was like, hey, so I know my portfolio was not a gaming portfolio, so what made you pick me? And he basically said, yeah, your portfolio didn't really have gaming subject matter, but I could see that you knew how to paint, and I could see that your style was pretty close to our game's art direction. And he felt like with a bit of guidance that I would do perfectly fine. And it was also really convenient that we all lived in the same city. So my experience is definitely going to be a bit different compared to those breaking into AA and AAA studio jobs where the barrier of entry for juniors is significantly higher. But regardless, always make sure that you're putting your best foot forward when applying for these game art jobs. Always make sure that you're improving your skills and making sure that your portfolio is in tip-top shape. But I think with smaller teams with good leaders, there's going to be a lot more enthusiasm to mentor their juniors. And I really hope to see the same investment from bigger studios in the future. And luck does play a significant role a lot of the time. It's not everything, of course, but I know in my case, it did play a big part. I happened to be at the right place at the right time. I happened to live in the same city as the studio owners. My art style happened to mesh really well with the game's art direction. And luck can be hard to relate to when listening to other people's journeys. So the best advice I could give is to keep putting yourself in positions where luck is more likely to strike. It's sort of like lightning and you're a metal rod trying to make yourself as conductive as possible. Connect with your community, attend events, invest in mentorships if you can swing it. Do everything within your means to invite luck into your life, which I know sounds a bit woo-woo, but I think it primarily happens when you connect with people, be genuine. So I don't know what's next for Red Essence. I heard Nick has a lot of fun ideas floating around in the ether. I absolutely love our team, and even though I am pursuing my own path with art, I do intend to contribute in some way to Red Essence's future projects, even if that contribution might be smaller than before. I feel like 8-year-old me would be absolutely stoked if she learned that when she grows up, she's gonna be an artist who works on a game. I've loved games since childhood. I've owned a Game Boy, a Nintendo 64, a PS1, a PS2. My career was also heavily influenced playing Neopets, if anyone remembers that. Put a finger down if you still have your account. Hell yeah, brother. Coming full circle with my career really does something special for my inner child. Thanks again for watching. My next video will be a fun one where I will be making some art. So I hope y'all stay tuned and I will see you there.